Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Akhanda Mandalakaram Vyapatam Yena Characharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, I'm Pradeep again on yet another episode of PraMonA. Today I'm going to talk about yoga and my experience with yoga as part of my spiritual journey. Yoga is perhaps, in fact not perhaps, definitely the most popular phrase, word, concept in so-called spirituality, in the so-called spiritual world. And at the same time, it is perhaps the most misunderstood, or rather not understood at all by the super majority of people who supposedly practice yoga, including the so-called yogis. It actually starts by not being able to pronounce the word properly. The super majority of people who practice yoga are clueless about the right pronunciation of this Sanskrit word, yog, yog, yog. It is not yoga. It is not yoga. It is not yoga. Yog, yog, yog. Repeat after me, repeat after me, repeat after me until you get it as part of your breath. Yog, yog, yog. There's no such word as yoga. There's no such word as yoga in Sanskrit or Hindi. It only exists in English, and it has nothing to do with yoga. It's something that was bastardized by the Western world, by the Westerners who were clueless about pronouncing the right way. And in typical Western aping fashion, the Indians adopted it as well and started mispronouncing it, something that was inherently part of their own culture, and yet they were as clueless about this simple word, this simple pronunciation as the Westerners, because they of course assumed that the Westerners know better. Yog, yog, yog. Yog of course means the union of mind, body, spirit. At its core, yoga is very simple. It is such a simple concept, the union of mind, body, spirit, the three-dimensional object, the three dimensions in which we live our life, the mind, the body, the spirit. The union of these three is yoga, which is what enables us to go further ahead on our spiritual journey to attain that all-important goal of becoming one with consciousness. The simplest way to understand yoga is to think of three rivers, the Sangam, in fact, the Triveni in Allahabad, in Prayag, Ganga, Jamuna, and Saraswati, merging together to create this beautiful confluence of energy coming together from three different ways, yet they become one in that Sangam. Prayagraj, which is why it's such a holy place. But there are different ways to get there. There is no single way or one single way that applies to everyone. And this is where it becomes interesting, and we have to go to the Gita for wisdom and knowledge on yoga, to understand what yoga is all about and how to attain this yogic way of life, to attain this wisdom, which allows us to merge into this consciousness as part of our spiritual journey. In the Gita, Krishna has realized that each human being, each person is unique, and therefore not one path can apply to every person. Each person is so different from each other that there has to be some variation that would be applicable, that would be of interest, that would be of some liking to a particular person. So he has described 4 different paths of yoga in the Gita. The first, Jnana Yoga. Second, Dhyana Yoga. Third, Bhakti Yoga. And fourth, Karma Yoga. I'm going to talk about these 4 yoga and the 4 different paths as explained by Krishna in conjunction with my own spiritual path, and how these 4 different yogas, the 4 different yogic paths opened up for me, and how or what they meant to me, and how they applied to my spiritual journey. Jnana Yoga, which is the path of wisdom. To obtain wisdom, to obtain knowledge. How? The most common way we know of obtaining knowledge and wisdom is by reading. It can be written word through books, scriptures, or it could be oral, as it was in the olden days, where the teachers and the masters and the sages passed on the wisdom and the knowledge in the form of shlokas and mantras and stories, and in a verbal manner that would go deep inside the student for him to imbibe, and that wisdom to become part of his vibrations, so to say. Gradually, this wisdom started being transcribed in the written form. So it became more widespread. It became more available to more people all around, all over the world eventually. That knowledge, wisdom that is attained through reading, through this oral tradition, is Jnana Yoga. It touches the intellect. It touches the mind primarily. It touches something in there, in the mind, in the intellect that allows us to understand, whether it's logically or emotionally, as to what that knowledge is trying to tell us. Now, this is not about necessarily the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, the logical side and the emotional side. It's a combination of the two which comes together to understand this Jnana Yoga, this path of Jnana, wisdom. It either sits there intellectually, it makes sense, it sinks in. It makes a lot of sense where it goes deep inside, intellectually, as a mental process, as the mind process. And the more you read and the more you attain this Jnana, this knowledge, from teachers and masters and sages and books and scriptures, the deeper it gets inside. This is the path on which I started in my early years. I was a voracious reader, starting with philosophy, Bertrand Russell, George Bernard Shaw, and many others, mainly from the Western tradition, the Western philosophers. But they set the pattern, they set the root, they set the foundation for me to move forward. That was a wisdom, that was a Jnana, that was a knowledge that went deeper and deeper and deeper. And as I graduated and moved to the Eastern philosophy, primarily the Indian philosophy, the Vedic philosophy, the Advaita philosophy. This foundation that had been laid when I was even a teenager allowed me to go further on this Jnana Yoga Marg. Marg is the path. And my voracious reading continued unabated. I would pick up books and scriptures and writings and scrolls and everything armful and read them again and again, the same book, the same title sometimes, by the same masters, the same teachers, until it started to reverberate, it started to resonate with deep inside, and allowed that knowledge and the wisdom to become part of me and to sit in there until it was time for it to bloom as part of my awakening, realization at a later date. So this is Jnana Yoga, the ability to attain consciousness, the ability to merge with that higher self through wisdom, understanding the process, understanding the concept, understanding how it works, understanding everything that is, the way it is, and why it is, intellectualizing it to some extent, logically explaining it, and it can be explained. That is Jnana Yoga. That is the first yoga that Krishna talks about as the path to consciousness. Next, he talks about Dhyana Yoga, the path of meditation. Dhyan is meditation. Actually, the word meditation again is very misleading. Dhyan really does not translate well into meditation, because meditation has come to mean primarily sitting cross-legged in a quiet pose, in a quiet place, and trying to concentrate and trying to bring your awareness and to your breath and so on. It has become an effort. Meditation has started to be construed as an effort to do something, to do meditation. It was through Osho that I really first understood the real meaning of dhyan. That is not about sitting cross-legged. It is not about sitting for an hour in a particular pose, quiet, and then coming out of that and getting back into the same routine. No. Dhyan was awareness. Dhyan was being in awareness. Dhyan was not an action. Dhyan was not a verb to do something. Dhyan was a concept to be in awareness. Dhyana charit, with awareness. And that is not confined to just half an hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours of concentrated sitting. It is 24/7. It is all the time, everywhere. Every activity, every action, every word, every drop of silence, from morning to night, even in sleep, 24/7, whatever it might be, is with awareness, or has to be with awareness. That is dhyan, and that is Dhyana Yoga. What is this awareness? What exactly is Krishna talking about? What does he mean by awareness? Awareness that we are one with that higher self. That higher self that we are constantly seeking elsewhere in the temples and the mosques and the churches and the cathedrals is not where it is. It is right inside. It's right inside us. The breath, the pran, the chi, the ki, that awareness of that realization. Once we have that awareness, once we have that realization, then it sits with us 24/7. And then it doesn't matter whether you sit cross-legged in concentrated meditation or not, because you're living with that awareness all the time. Everything that you do is full of awareness, full of knowing that chit, as it's called in Sanskrit, awareness, of being one with the consciousness, one with the higher self. There's no separation. Advaita, non-duality, comes into the picture in this Dhyana Yoga. So that was the second yoga, the second path. If one can be on this path of awareness all the time, then that can take us to this ultimate goal of self-realization and merging with the consciousness. The third path that Krishna talks about is Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti, again, is a very unique Sanskrit word, and there is no equivalent word in English. Devotion comes to mind, but devotion doesn't even come close to understanding or describing what bhakti really is. To understand bhakti, we have to bring together two words. One is trust and one is surrender. Complete surrender with complete trust to a higher self, to a source, to an energy, to something that is or seems to be outside of us, and we surrender ourselves completely. We trust that source, we trust that energy completely, and therefore we're able to surrender completely. No questions asked. That is bhakti. That is true devotion. There's no doubt. There's no scope for any shanka. There's no possibility of any questions. There's no logical thinking involved in that. There's no mind involved in that, in fact. It comes purely from the anahata, the heart pouring out love, affection, bhakti, this trust, and allowing us to surrender completely, taking off the burden from our shoulders, removing all the baggage from ourselves, and just saying, here I am, completely, I'm part of you, take me. I am nothing without you. That is devotion. That is bhakti, where you become one with that higher self, with that higher consciousness, with that higher being. There's no separation anymore. The best example being Meera and Krishna. There's no better example in the scriptures of bhakti yoga other than understanding Meera and her bhakti, her devotion for Krishna. There was no separation. It was as if they were one. It was not as if, but they were one. That is bhakti yoga. And if we are able to do that, meaning to trust and surrender completely to the higher self, that allows us to become one with that. That allows us to merge with that higher consciousness, to the higher self. And that is the third path, the third marg that Krishna talks about, Bhakti Yoga. The last path, marg, that he talks about in the Gita is the most common one that most people understand is the Karma Yoga, or at least they think they understand. Again, another word, karma, which is of course also mispronounced and then misunderstood. Karma is not just action. Karma is not just doing something. Karma is not an activity. Karma is an amalgamation, a combination of samskaras, impressions, of awareness, of dhyan, of everything. It's almost as if the first three paths, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, they merge into Karma Yoga. Which is why I'm talking about Karma Yoga as the fourth. It doesn't mean that it's the last. It doesn't mean that it's less important than the first three. It's just that it helps to explain when we understand Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Dhyana Yoga. It's easier to understand what Karma Yoga is. What I mean by that is, if we have already practiced and understood Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, they reflexively, naturally merge and come together in the form of Karma Yoga, where you don't even have to do anything. It's just a natural process. You follow that path. You just become someone who's walking on that path, on that marg. And your steps, your footsteps keep moving forward without you even being aware of that. That is true yoga, to not even be aware that you're on the path of karma yoga. A karma yogi is one who does not know what his actions are. He does not know whether it's good or bad, because there is no good or bad. He's just doing what comes naturally to him. That's a true karma yogi, not for the sake of telling others or to do something or seems like it's good. No, that's not karma yoga. Karma yoga is something which is done simply. It just happens. There's no doer. In fact, there's no doer involved in that, because it is coming from deep inside that connection which has been established through bhakti yoga, the wisdom that has come from jnana yoga, and that awareness that has come from dhyana yoga. All of them coming together to push, to propel you on this karma yoga, on this path of action. And action I'm using, for lack of a better word in English, of karma yoga, of moving forward in a natural way. So what happened with me? So as I said, it started with Jnana Yoga. It moved to Dhyana Yoga. But very soon I realized that what I was being taught, or what I was given to understand, or what I read for myself about Dhyan, meditation, was from a Western perspective, was from a traditional, not from a traditional, but from a conventional perspective, things that had been misunderstood. And I tried to sit cross-legged. I tried to sit in concentrated form, in a quiet form, trying to still my mind and focus on the breath, using all the different props, the techniques that are thrown at you, that are shown to you, that are taught to you, guided meditation, and so on, all different kinds of meditation with different names and nomenclatures and everything else. Nothing worked for me. Absolutely nothing. I just cannot sit quiet, cross-legged for any more than 5 minutes. I can do my mala, I can do my japa, yes, but I cannot sit in a meditation pose, in a meditation form for even 5 minutes. And then, like I said, when I learned the true meaning of Dhyana Yoga through Osho, to be aware, to be completely awakened in every way, then it made a lot of sense. And that's where my progress, my spiritual path moved on from Jnana Yoga to Dhyana Yoga. And then came Bhakti Yoga. As I moved further along and things started happening for me, events started happening, I started seeing different things in different places with different people. I started meeting different masters and teachers and yogis, and visited places of tremendous energy and chi and ki all over the world, especially in India. It just became clear. It became so clear that there is something where you have to surrender to the higher self. You just, again, automatically, you just bow down. You just become grateful. You become humble. When you see the vastness of this energy, when you realize the vastness of the universe, the Brahmand, how vast it is and how minuscule we are, not even a speck, humility just steeps in. And you just instinctively, naturally, you surrender yourself. You just fall down, you bow down to that higher self. It does not have to have a form. It doesn't have a form. It's formless, it's nameless, it's colorless. But yet it is there. You can feel it. You can feel the palpitations when you go to these places, when you're in a certain environment with certain people in satsang. You can feel that bhakti. You can feel that sense of devotion, that surrender that comes with trust completely. And I started moving on that path. And again, it took off a complete burden off my shoulders. I became a free person. I started soaring like a free bird, higher and higher and higher, not worried about who I am, not worried about what's going to happen, but just completely having surrendered and having nothing but a sense of gratefulness. That was Bhakti Yoga. And then came Karma Yoga, which, as I explained earlier, it just naturally flowed from the Jnana Yoga, the Dhyana Yoga, and the Bhakti Yoga, they merged together to take me further and further along on this path. The action started happening, the satsang started happening, the talks started happening, the teaching started happening, the workshop started happening, the sharing started happening, the writing started happening, all in a natural flow that I had nothing to do. It was as if I was being pushed. It was as if I was moving forward with someone behind me, just gradually and gently taking me forward, slowly, step by step. I was not even aware. I'm just not aware sometimes of how it comes, where it comes from, the writings, the talk, the speech, the workshops. I just don't realize. It just comes. That is Karma Yoga. What I call the manifestation, in a way, that other people can see something that is coming out from you. It is perhaps not best to explain it that way, because even that sometimes is not important what other people see. It's about how you feel. You feel completely open and clear, as if there's this gush of energy flowing from inside you that you want to share, because you know you're coming closer and closer to that higher self, to that consciousness, which is the whole purpose of yoga, the coming together of mind, body, and spirit. And as Krishna said, each one has a different form and a different marg, a different path. Some people feel more comfortable intellectually with Jnana Yoga, they follow that. Some people are more comfortable sitting in meditation for hours, days, weeks, months. That's fine. That can take them to the same place. Some people are more comfortable, like Meera, with complete, utter devotion, bhakti. Bhakti Yoga can take them to that place. And some people are more comfortable and it's more natural for them to be on the Karma Yoga path, and that can take them there. Some people have a combination of 1, 2, 3, or all 4. For me, it was a step-by-step process where I kind of graduated from one to the other, to the third, to the fourth, until it all came together. And you don't even realize that this is what it has happened until you want to look back. But you don't want to look back, you want to look forward, because you've already attained that. The purpose of yoga, the coming together of mind, body, and spirit that Krishna was talking about in the Gita, that's yoga. Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. If you realize, based on what I just said, I'm not talking about Hatha Yoga anywhere. Krishna does not talk about Hatha Yoga in Gita anywhere. Hatha Yoga is a process. Hatha Yoga is a prop in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. It is the prop, it is a process to prepare you for the real yogic way of life. By cleansing your mind, body, and spirit through different means, through asanas, through pranayam, through kriyas, so that you're ready for this one of the 4 paths, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Karma Yoga, that Krishna is really talking about. That's the real yoga. The Hatha Yoga is a physical aspect for the most part to prepare your body, because your body needs to be prepared. It needs to be ready to accept the changes that will come when you follow this yogic path, one of the yogic paths or multiple paths to move forward. That is Hatha Yoga. Unfortunately, this Hatha Yoga, especially the asanas, have become a synonym for yoga or yoga, and that's where the world is right now. It's sad, but it's a reality. But hopefully a few people understand what yoga is really all about, how it is to be practiced, what does it mean, and most importantly, how it is to be pronounced. Yog, 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 yog. Namaste.